Thank
This
you, everybody.
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to our redux of the presentation we made a few weeks ago. My name is Dave Ghirardelli with the Sacramento County Waste Management and Recycling Department, and I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about an innovative approach we took to organics procurement. As we all know, we're facing a lot of challenges due to how to retool ourselves to get ready to handle the requirements of SB 1383. A little bit about Sacramento County and the cities within it first. Sacramento County has a unique development pattern and setup. The countywide population is a little more than 1.5 million people. And in the unincorporated county, we have a little over 600,000 of that. Sacramento County is kind of the uncity. And then, of course, we have the city of Sacramento, which has a little more than 500,000 million people in it. And one of our partner cities that we've worked with a lot is the city of Folsom with about 80. We have some smaller incorporated cities within it as well. This is the general lay of the land, and you will notice the colored incorporated areas are labeled there on the map as cities, obviously, and you'll see a very close street location, and that's a very highly dense development pattern in a lot of what is the unincorporated area. So yes, our collections vehicles do pass each other on the road. You can pass from one city into the other and from a city out into the county and not notice any change in the development pattern. So, chaotic conundrums of collections. Batman, what on earth is that? Well, folks, these arrows show the flow of green waste currently and in the recent past. Well, let's dissect it a little bit. The elegantly cartoonish blue polygons there are roughly centroids. Those are our collections vehicles. They are not exactly on the centroid per se, but they generally are depictive of the where the collections routes are run out of. You will notice in the city of Sacramento, there is a north one and a south one. In the unincorporated county, there is a north one and a south one. And up in the city of Folsom, in the northeastern corner of the county, they have just one. The cities of Citrus Heights, Rancho Cordova, and Elk Grove also have their own collections operations, but they did not participate in our project. Those two yellow stars are two transfer stations that are county owned and have or currently serve for green waste transfer. The red star out in the eastern portion of the county is Kiefer Landfill, which is a county owned facility that processes some green waste for a variety of uses and serves as a waste station. These are the routes off our centroids and where they go. You'll notice two more yellow stars appeared down in the southern area of the county. Those are two private facilities that the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento from its south centroid will use. The yellow lines and the red lines are haul, backhaul, and transfer. So you'll see that there are many instances where green waste is just moving throughout the county in not the most efficient manner. This is a system that it's historic. It's developed over time due to contractual and market conditions, but it is custom made for improvement through cooperation. And so that is one of the things we took to trying to collaborate in this innovative approach to procuring organic services. So what was motivating us? We got together and reached out to all the municipalities in the county. The 3 municipalities that chose not to have a private residential franchisee who was pretty certainly just going to take care of them and take care of their process. They are still working on it. The city of Folsom and the city of Sacramento, of course, cooperate with the county of Sacramento in terms of material processing and use of transfer stations, etc. So they were custom-made partners, and we decided we would do better by joining forces. So what were the motivations for how we were going to try to improve this system? Well, one, of course, is the problem I like to call Woodmageddon, which is what's the marketplace through biomass recovery evaporating. We also have our 1383 requirements looming on the horizon. All 3 of the municipalities, well, the county and the 2 cities, had soon to be expiring contracts for organics processing. And as you saw in the map, there is just so much built-in inefficiency. Now was the time to try to improve that. So we decided to get together and try an innovative approach to procurement, even though we are not participants in a joint powers authority that deals with residential waste. This is the lay of the land in terms of tonnage figures. This is pulled from the characterization that the state did a few years ago. I have a couple of questions around the edges as to how accurate some of these numbers are, or excuse me, how precise these numbers are, because precision and accuracy are 2 slightly different things, but they roughly describe the scale of the problem we are looking at. You'll notice in the 4th row there is also a significant amount of tonnage, wood and brush primarily, that is brought to county facilities by self-haul. This is not part of the residential green waste collection. This is self-haul landscaping debris primarily. So we decided we would put together a request for proposals for services after joining forces. The county was the lead agency, but all 2 cities in the county were participants to it. And we felt that if we presented a higher tonnage total, we would be in a stronger market position to get better rates and better terms over time. These are some of the some examples of why we broadened our scope in terms of what we were looking for. Proposals were solicited for both the near term, I'll describe what that is shortly, and for the long term, looking for solutions that might answer one or the other or both. We were open and very descriptive in the RFP that we would be looking for existing facilities that could handle some or all of this material, or new facilities, existing facilities that would expand. And we noted very clearly that food waste would be added to the residential green waste stream. There were some criteria in there that we wanted to see that any proposer had done previous projects successfully and knew what they were doing in terms of making the product marketable. We set up the evaluation committee. The county was lead. We had 3 members. The city of Sacramento, largely due to their size, had 2. And of course, the city of Folsom still had 1 representative. There were 6 of us on the evaluation committee. We also hired the kind folks over at Jacobs Engineering because we knew we would want to do very detailed analysis of these proposals, and they responded to an RFP prior to the organics diversion services RFP to provide those technical services in support of the evaluation committee. In the RFP, we included an example matrix. And you'll see kind of the full-blown version of this on the subsequent slide. But this describes how the matrix would be set up. You'll see across the top, the term. You'll see across the left-hand column, tonnage commitment. And for example, if a proposer were to have filled out this matrix, they would be uninterested in proposing anything for less than a term of 3 years, and would be uninterested in proposing anything with a tonnage commitment less than 2,000 tons. And this is how the matrix looked. And this one is the near-term tonnage commitment matrix. And in any cell, any proposal had to at least submit one firm number in one cell so that we could compare one proposal to another. Near-term matrix would begin July 2020, which of course, because of the plague, has not happened, but we're still, that's it. Honestly, we still think it's right around the corner. We have, I'll talk about contracts that we've agreed to later in the presentation with an addendum, an update. But when we first set this up in late 2019, July 1, 2020 was when we had anticipated a start date. Term commitments along the top, and tonnage commitments along the left. We received 9 proposals, which were actually 14 proposals if you look at the breakdown. 1 was for near term only, 3 were for long term only, and 5 proposers submitted for both. So they submitted 2 proposals, giving us 14 totals. They included new facilities, existing facilities with expansions, use of existing transfer stations, and notably, we received proposals from public and private facilities. We set up the evaluation in 3 different stages. First would be a technical analysis, and we had a gatekeeper on the receipt of the proposals. And the first thing they did was redact all cost figures. And the technical analysis, the last thing we wanted to do was find somebody that had a really great price, but an unproven technology, something that might or might not work down the line. So we conducted this technical analysis. We wanted a proven technology. This was important, a predictable regulatory framework. I know we are all, those of us who are in both certainly the facility operating business, but collections as well, shifting sands and moving goalposts are very much a problem for us. And we wanted to see somebody that had a technology that had a relatively predictable regulatory framework. Project had to be feasible, everything from land use to a whole host of things. A financial capability behind the company. Capacity mattered. If you could provide more capacity, that would improve your score. Readiness, how quickly you could get this thing up and running. And then, of course, there was a greenhouse gas emissions analysis for everything involved. Second was a cost analysis tool. The folks at Jacobs really helped us out with this. They put a lot of work into developing a tool for us so that we could compare proposals that might have different tonnage commitments and different term commitments, as well as might fit as a piece in a puzzle, where we might not necessarily just choose one proposal. They put a lot of work into this, and I think it's a stellar product. What it allows us to do is to play with scenarios. We could move certain tonnage and certain term commitments at certain locations coming from certain centroids, develop a scenario. And we developed, as you see, just this screenshot only gives you 9, but we had dozens of them. And it would give us what the costs were and what the greenhouse gas analysis would be. And it was a fantastic tool for us, and it let us spread it out over years, and then we would be able to find what it was going to cost to each individual jurisdiction. Because remember, this is a cooperative RFP. At the end of the day, any proposer might have a contract with any one or two or all three of the jurisdictions. So all jurisdictions submitted a sample professional services contract into the RFP. So that tool was incredibly valuable. And then finally, we conducted in the third stage what we called a compatibility analysis. And this was where each jurisdiction conducted their own cost analysis scenarios after we had sat around a table and really talked about all these proposals in detail. And we each went back to our respective conference rooms, back before in the days when we actually met together in conference rooms, and did their own analysis, and then came back with the scenarios that really made the most sense for them, and we hammered out a negotiated solution. And what we ended up with is this, which just graphically looks a lot better. You don't have lots of transfer back and forth across the busiest sections of the city and the county. You've got the city of Sacramento peeling off some of their material and sending it just west of Sacramento directly off route. You've got the city of Sacramento using a county transfer station in the north, and the county also doing that and sending material up north in up only one highway on transfer. And then the city of Folsom and both the city and the county come down to the south area of the county, get transfer, and send it out. There were proposals for development of facilities in county. They did not perform as well, both in cost as well as in greenhouse gas analysis, and that's critical. The transfer to just over the county line did not come close to impacting the greenhouse gas severity that juggling this material back and forth across the county might have done. So that's basically the summation. We have, as a quick update, not on the slideshow, due to a number of things, most notably, of course, the dramatic reduction in commercial food, the COVID pandemic, a lot of things have just been delayed. So we have 3 contracts negotiated. We chose 3 proposals rather, and 1 to the north of the county, 1 to the west of the county, and 1 to the south of the county. And we split the material up. All 3 jurisdictions are utilizing a portion of at least one of those proposers. Contracts are scheduled to go to the board. They've been fully negotiated, and we don't anticipate any further problems. I think it's in about 2 or 3 weeks. And we're really happy that we were able to do this in an innovative fashion, where rather than compete with each other for capacity, we collaborated. So if you have any questions or comments or emotional outbursts, well, guess what? You can't give them to me right now because I'm just getting put up on YouTube. But My email address is down there. Please feel free to email me with questions, and I'm happy to share with you a copy of the RFP. Thanks.
All right, we're going to pause for a second while we move over to Tim Rively's presentation.
Hi folks, Tim Rively here, HDR Engineering. And just before I get going, let's make sure I'm on. Everything look okay?
Yep.
Good deal. All right, thank you. My presentation is also on procuring organic services. It's a presentation that takes perspective more from a standpoint of participating in the development of the facility than just contracting for services. And the reason for that is this wheel of key aspects of the facility, all tied back to funding, is very it's reminiscent of any kind of a development program where each of these features has to be resolved. And I thought it was important to present it in the context of this perspective, because even if your city or county or authority is only procuring services and not participating in development, remember, others have to do these other components that you're not going to do. And for that reason, it's good to be aware of them and appreciate them, value them, and know that that's a part of your decision perspective to be aware of all the stuff that happens behind the scene. This presentation is built around a project we were part of in British Columbia. It was a P3 funded facility for the city of Surrey, which is the largest residential community. Actually, it's going to overtake the city of Vancouver anytime now as far as population goes. So it's the suburbs of Vancouver. The facility was designed to be an anaerobic digestion facility. It takes about 115,000 tons a year of co-collected yard and food waste from the residences, plus institutional, industrial, and commercial waste. We would call that food waste from various kinds of sources, including hospitals, grocery stores, restaurants, and so on. It was a dedicated digester, so it's not co-digestion with any biosolids. And it was they produce a biofuel that's pipeline quality, injected into the Fortis BC grid, and then wheeled it to the local city truck fleet, where they fuel their CNG fleet with that. It was a design, build, and operate transfer model, and it was included some developer guarantees and some developer participation in the risk of it. And it was, again, P3 funded, which means a certain amount of the cash came out of the federal government. The reason for that similarity is because this is the kind of thing we've seen being developed in various wastewater treatment plants and other kinds of entities around the state. And so we thought it was relevant to talk about it in this broader text. Of course, here in California, this is 1383 time, following up from maybe 1826. All the diversion requirements that all date back to AB 32, back a decade or so ago, when we knew waste diversion was coming our way, organics diversion was coming, and we needed to be prepared for it. Now it's on us, and it's on us in a big way in terms of percentages and timelines. And so it's more important than ever to have your ducks lined up to be prepared to take this material and have it go somewhere. So again, I'll walk through each of these elements. Some of them are, there just isn't enough time right now to go through all of them in detail, but I'll touch on a few of the key issues and skip over the rest as we get there. Waste supply is one of the most important aspects of this whole conversation, because it's the waste supply and the guarantee of waste that eventually toggles a bunch of other key issues in the conversation. Domino effect. The waste supply and its quality and composition tells us what kind of technology needs to be there, the permitting for it, what biogas could come from it if you're using digestion, if not, what the quality of likely compost would be based on its contaminant level. So there's a lot of features here that are in play. The attributes of the material, of course, who controls it and what's the material coming from, but the risks of that is what's going to happen over time. So we haven't really, many of our cities and counties haven't really developed fully fledged programs where we're going to go out and collect this material. So some of this is a bit of an unknown. So being ready for that unknown and how to deal with it is important to think about. The waste supply feeds into the decision about what the technology was, as I just mentioned, who has control of the waste stream. Sometimes there are institutions out there that don't want to, their waste stream's committed. They're taking it to animal feedlots or something else, so it's not really readily available. Know that when you go into this effort and in the marketplace. There are competitive marketplaces that take materials elsewhere. There's often cheaper remedies, and those things can steal feedstock away, so be aware of those things. One of the key questions is, what will the generators do when it comes to complying with the desired feedstock supply requirements? I'll talk about SIRI in just a minute, but remember, the generators, if we haven't put a program out in place where we're going to co-collect a material that we have never done before, or collect a material we've never done before, we can discover a bunch of unknowns there. People can behave in ways we didn't anticipate, and that can really cause chaos in this whole system. Part of the effort in scoping the RFP, again, is then defining what the range of quantity of material is going to be, the quality of the material, who's responsible for getting it, what level of diversion do you need to get out of this material. Some cities are reaching for climate action goal levels, which are even above the 1383 level. So what's the facility going to do to provide a guarantee of your wished, your desired performance requirements? When it comes to key procurement decisions, again, the range of the composition, you're offering your materials for someone else to process. How does that come out in the context of that entity able to be assured that they have the equipment array and ready to perform the necessary duties of managing that material? One of the things at the bottom of the slide I want to point out too is, do you have political support for rate adjustments? This is most likely going to cost a lot more than you've been doing. And so there are some cities and counties that haven't really vetted out whether or not there's a support to go back and change those fee structures. And that's an important part of making a viable effort here in procuring these services. Are there other agencies wishing to participate? That can give you some great economies of scale that you may not have had if you go it alone. This is an example of what we wish we want to see, upper left corner, food waste. What it turns into be when we arrive, when it's received, looks like garbage. And when you pull it apart and sort it, that lower left or lower right corner, half the material arriving out of that center picture is garbage. So that's a pretty tough feedstock, causes a lot of complications in both digestion and in composting. So we want to do better than that, but sometimes our dream of what it is versus what reality is, this is the reason we're having this conversation, is to be thinking of these things and be prepared for what could eventually, come your way, which is in this case a disaster. Finally, will the respondent that you're seeking, the participant, have the ability to manage these issues that you probably need to have, as support for generator education, program outreach? Is the facility fully permitted? Do they have a regulatory compliance program? Are they tracking and have a reporting program that's as robust as 1383 requires? Are they really capable of moving the product into the marketplace? I know we'll get about marketing and product in a bit, but you don't want to be taking back materials that aren't really marketable either. So Those are some of the things that we want to be sure that when you're securing those services, that these things are lined up for you. Technology and permitting. Again, probably one of the top issues here is, are the facilities technologically advanced enough to do what you need to be done, and are they still being innovated? Is this a new industry that hasn't really been evolved to a point where it's ready to be operational? What are the performance guarantees that this entity is offering? What does the overall facility look like in the context of being ready, up and ready, and able to go? If you notice the timeline, the beginning, the 1383 has a really aggressive timeline. So being ready to function at the level that's needed is important. From a technology standpoint, there's a lot of variability here. The wastewater treatment plant co-digestion, if there's excess capacity, is certainly an option. We're seeing that on our wastewater side, but from a standpoint of dedicated digestion, there's a lot of variability, and the dedicated digestion systems can, for the most part, if they're dry at least, can take more contamination. But there are issues with all of these. From a compost technology standpoint, there's a lot of variability now in the terms of its method of aeration, cover method, how they're handling the configuration of material, whether it's windows or bunkers or extended beds. So all these things play into the capacity for the facility to operate. But at the end of the day, you've got to get a facility permit, and these are dates I have here. Time lanes for each of the various permits. The AQMD, the Air Quality Management District Authority, construct and permit to operate. 1 to 2.5 years, but we've seen these facilities run 5 or 8 years. Calorie cycle permit, 9 months if you're lucky, 1.5 years probably, or longer. But all those 3 regulatory agencies at the bottom, they generally don't get going in earnest until you're done with the environmental review. So you've got an EIR or a mitigated neg deck, and you take anywhere from half a year to several years to get that tied down, and then have these other permits lined up to go through. You're still looking at several years down the road. So look at that 1383 requirements, and can you meet that 2025 deadline? Yikes. Be aware of that fact when you think about this facility and its readiness to be going forward. Residuals management. I'm thinking in the context of what's the quality of the material, who's going to manage it, are there components of this material that if it's digestion, for example, is the digestate going to be composted, and then where's that material go? Those are all issues that eventually affect your beneficial use options and how you're impacting your diversion numbers. So keep in mind there are residuals. Site's probably the most critical issue. We're not going to talk much about it though in this conversation. Certainly it has to have the right size and features and have a neighborhood that can accept it. And of course it has to be permittable and have all the environmental documentations. The big thing here is politically and publicly acceptable. And that's a very high bar to cross. And so you're talking about facilities that haven't been permitted already. For this contract or this situation, I think you probably shouldn't be talking to those entities. But the site and its attributes will play a key role in the coming decades as this facility has to function over time. I think in the context of my co-presenter here, Dave Garadelli, spent a lot of time talking about the logistics of how facilities can function, and that the site plays into it, where the site's located, its haul distance and all that. But is it expandable, and is it ready to be, is it in a place to send commodities to secondary markets? If it's compost, is it in a place where ag land is nearby, or is that going to be trucked, or is there some other expectation on how the material is going to move? So that's the site development issue. Products and markets. There's a lot of Wood-again kind of conversations going on now about too much material coming on and glutting the market. But at the end of the day, I think those companies that are in the capable hands of moving material into into the market supply chain are capable, are going to continue to do that and succeed at it. And so the question is, is there experience in the field of moving the material out the door and making a product that has a high demand, and then moving that material out into the marketplace? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of material moving, and you want to be in a position of not having the Brown Mountain syndrome, where there's too much material laying around, has no marketplace. Remember, 1383 requires you to buy back a little under 1/10 of a ton per resident per year, which I'm hoping there's some clarification about that, but that's a lot of material. And so some of the other components here is, will the market demand help offset some of the tip fees to some extent? We hope. May not be a great number, so I wouldn't count on market products being your salvo for solving this economic dilemma. The same, by the way, goes with in renewable energy. We've seen a lot of conversation about biogas, and it's and we've participated in many projects that are successfully using like Surrey's biofuel facility. They're using biogas successfully, but even the low carbon fuel standards or federal renewable energy RIN standards don't necessarily produce enough economic benefit to even come close to overriding the kind of cost structure that's likely going to be necessary for these facilities to function. And depending on the in-feed material, that's a pretty rough picture on the left of what we're trying to turn into a useful product on the right. It can be done. This picture on the right is the successful product out of the material from the left, but it takes a lot of energy and effort and equipment to pull that off. From the standpoint of jurisdictional requirements on 1383, keep in mind that you do have the obligation to either buy back compost or renewable gas, electricity, or some of the other commodities that are made from this product system. So we hope there's some clarification on that going forward. But as a part of your procurement services, offtake agreements are probably going to be likely, and be ready to handle those, be ready to be well aware of the attributes of what that means to you. Otherwise, you'll have your own Brown Mountain syndrome, where you'll be buying material back and may not be able to get rid of it. Ownership deal structure. Clearly, that's an issue that's if we're in a position of not owning this facility, this is probably not a big topic. But someone has to take all the risks. It has to go into this facility, effort, float the bonds, build the facility. One of the things that I like to think about in the context of ownership is who's best equipped to take the risks, who's really capable of managing fluctuating marketplaces, evolving technologies, challenging situations with labor and equipment. Sometimes that's the private sector, and that's why this conversation is important to think through, even though you're only securing services potentially, that all these issues need to be resolved and handled by someone. At the end of the day, all these issues have to be tied down. Like I said, market fluctuations of the feedstock or the byproduct, site economies of scale, all these things can be critical to the entire system functionality. From a wastewater treatment standpoint, who we've assisted in some places, how the risks are really managed are really limited just to the wastewater treatment side. And once the material takes out of the back of the facility, that usually is still private sector serviced. Funding, everything ties back to funding. At the end of the day, all of the issues of feedstock, the technology permitting, funding is the key issue, and it's the hub of all of these issues, because all these features, because without funding, we don't have a facility. And remember, banks have to be able to, banks won't loan money on a non-financeable project. So it requires guarantees, it requires sophistication of all the issues I've already mentioned to assure a bank that the developer is in a position to handle this material. And that's what ultimately our Surrey project was about, was developing a procurement that brought in a partner that participated in the technology that gave the bank the financeable assurance to proceed. Again, funding all of the issues in the RFP. If there's participation in the context of development, that the respondent has to deal with all these issues about permitting, finance, who's going to do the engineering, the ability to build and permit and operate. And so that's really the wrapping up of all the topics I have to say. And to the extent that it's relevant to you, feel free to give me a call. There's my email and phone number. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Drop me a line anytime. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. So we'll be posting Dave and Tim's presentations online, as well as this recording that we did today. And you can find all of that information on our website at swanandnorcal.org/events.